Thank you. Welcome to our June 3rd regular council meeting for today, Monday. Oh, it's been a long weekend. I apologize. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have all council members here. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Any declarations, or sorry, we'll go to the national anthem first. Sorry. Please stand if you're able.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Closed meeting report tonight. Any declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council this evening? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through you, Madam Mayor, conflict of interest on item 10.10 on ice or, oh, is that the right one? Hang on, maybe I don't have the right one. Oh, that is it. No, that isn't. Sorry. I had the number a minute ago. 10:10. 10:10. 10:16? It's 10:16.
Okay, thank you. When that comes up, just remind us and do not partake in the conversation. I will also be declaring conflict on item 14.2 for the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes, adopting those. And at that time, I will pass the gavel on to our Deputy Mayor. I need a mover and a seconder to adopt the published agenda, and we do have several people in the audience that wish to be delegates tonight. I want to make sure I capture everybody. We have Ms. Ramsey speaking on behalf of a group of residents, and we have Mr. Martin and Mr. Keller, who are also delegations. So when you approach council, you will be given the podium at the back. You turn the mic on, and depending, one person is 5 minutes and a group is 10. So any other delegations in the audience? Okay, so approving the agenda as amended with our delegate. Needing a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Mady, all in favor? And that is carried. Adoption of the meeting minutes of May 24th. 21st, looking for a mover and a seconder. That the regular council meeting minutes of April 15th be adopted as circulated. Councillor Hammond, Councillor Guerin, any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. We have our special council meeting minutes for April 15th on the site-specific zoning amendment. Looking for a mover and a seconder that those minutes be adopted as circulated. Councillor Allard, Councillor Mady, all in favor? That's carried. We have our special council meeting minutes for April 15th. The minutes of our integrity commissioner update. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions? That is carried. And now we'll go to public presentations. We have Katie Stamler here from the Water Quality Science and Source Water Protection Project with the Essex Region Conservation Authority, and Tom Firth, Chair of the Essex Region Source Protection Committee. And I believe they are on Zoom tonight. Welcome.
That's correct. Hi, thanks very much. I want to first apologize. Chair Firth wasn't able to attend this evening, so it's just myself, Katie Stamler. I'm the project manager from the Essex Region Conservation Authority. And I'm talking to you today about the Source Water Protection Plan and Annual Report. I'm actually coming to you from Peterborough, where I'm attending a project managers meeting with the Ministry of Environment. So hopefully we have some additional updates from that. I just want to take the opportunity to remind everybody about what source water protection is. So the Clean Water Act came into place in 2006 following the Walkerton tragedy, where there was a well that was contaminated with E. coli. Several people lost their lives. Many people were left with long-term illnesses. There was an inquiry into that event that resulted in 121 recommendations from Justice O'Connor. The Clean Water Act is one piece of what they call the multi-barrier approach, and our job is to protect the sources of drinking water at the intake. So making sure that the activities that happen on the ground are not causing significant drinking water threats. In the Essex region, we have 7 drinking water intakes. There are 2 in Lake St. Clair, 2 in the Detroit River, and 3 in Lake Erie. Because of the location of our drinking water intakes, that they are far away from shore and that they're deep in the water, we don't have as many activities on the landscape within the region itself that are significant drinking water threats. What we do have and what the town of Essex is part of is the vulnerable area that's called the event-based area, where the handling and storage of large volumes of liquid fuel is a significant drinking water threat. The town of Essex has delegated their authority to write risk management plans to the Conservation Authority, which has been completed. And we also have in the region harmful algal blooms as a significant drinking water issue. Because we have the toxins produced by the harmful algal blooms that occur in Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie. The reason that we're here today is because every year on May 1st, we release our annual reports. Our first one was released in 2017, and then we just released our 2023 report. The Source Protection Committee reviews the information provided by the various implementing bodies. And beginning in 2022, and again this year, our Source Protection Committee opted to give municipalities a low scoring grade of limited progress. This being because many of our municipalities are not done their official plan conformity exercise with the Source Protection Plan. I am happy to say that the town of Essex has completed that exercise, and it's my understanding that you're actually into your next round of updating your official plan, which is great news, but we do have 6 of our municipalities that have done their official plan conformity exercise yet. So it was the direction of our Source Protection Committee, as well as the Source Protection Authority, that myself and Chair Firth come before all of our municipalities to present this information. I do also want to take the opportunity to let you know that we are undergoing a full review of the Source Protection Plan. It's what's called a Section 36 update. We are amending all of the policies in the plan, as well as some technical work. This will be submitted to the ministry for review shortly, and then beginning towards the end of 2024, we'll be doing a public consultation. So we'll be working with the municipalities on that. So just since I'm here, I wanted to give you that heads up that you'll see me again before the end of 2024. So thank you for your time to present to you today. Appreciate it.
Any questions, comments from members of council? I do have a question myself, of course. And I know it's not on the radar here yet, but is it, so I've been picking up a lot of garbage and I pick it up in the ditches, and I'm finding that a lot of the plastic is like completely breaking down. Is there anything in the radar? Like, because I could see plastic making its way into our lake, and, you know, the microplastics, having a hard time even filtering those out. Is that on the radar yet to even look at microplastics and how we can treat them like source water protection issues as well?
Yeah, good question. So not from a source water perspective, because the way that the significant drinking water threats are identified through the Clean Water Act is a very specific activity that causes either a chemical or pathogen contamination. So you have to be able to pinpoint where the activity is happening. With plastic pollution, it's ubiquitous, and you know, it could be coming from anywhere. It could be coming from our landfills where things are starting to break down. In that sort of way. So it's likely not going to become a source water problem, but there is a lot of attention on microplastics through different pieces of environmental law. And, you know, we've seen some changes with taking microbeads out of cosmetic products and that sort of thing. And really, really such an important message is having individuals avoid single-use plastic as much as possible. so that we can avoid some of that trash that's going in. But I don't see it becoming a source water issue. We're looking more at potentially things like PFAS production and that sort of thing as maybe a next thing to include in source water.
There are lots of things in our ditches, lots of disgusting things.
A lot
car
of
batteries,
things.
buckets of oil. It's pretty gross. We're
Yeah.
looking for a mover and a seconder that the delegation by Katie Stamler from Water Quality Scientist Source Water Protection be received. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Hammond, any further questions? Thank you for coming tonight. Enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you.
evening. All in
Thanks so
favor?
much.
And that is carried. Moving on to reports from administration, development services, fill and grade bylaw amendment, and we will go to Director Chadwick, and we also have Mr. Carter here in case there's any questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councils and members of the public. So the purpose of the report before you tonight is in response to council's direction from March of this year to amend the fill and grade bylaw to prevent large-scale fill sites in the town of Essex. So as a refresher, back in March, administration presented a report describing the intent of the fill and grade bylaw, the permitting process, and the various benefits and issues related to and associated with large-scale fill and grade sites in the town of Essex. So in summary, council heard about the impacts from residents, landowners adjacent, but also in close proximity to some of these large-scale fill sites. Impacts such as continued and ongoing noise, dust issues from the large trucks, deteriorating road conditions, and overall just nuisances from some of these sites. So council thereby directed administration to report back on how best to prevent further large-scale fill sites in the town of Essex, either through repealing of the bylaw or amending the bylaw. You also asked us to look at the review or the possibility of terminating the current large-scale fill permits and what that could look like. So in terms of repealing the bylaw, administration looked at this approach and we do not recommend this approach. This is because a bylaw in and of itself gives you the power and gives you the ability to be able to set limitations and restrictions and allows you to explicitly state what you would like to permit and what you would like to prohibit. And so what we would look for you tonight to do is to consider, and for your decision-making, instead of repealing the bylaw, we would recommend amending the bylaw, which we've attached to the report. So the amendments will describe a few some changes that are just kind of housekeeping, but some of the bigger changes here, namely to impose a restriction of no more than 1,200 cubic meters of fill on a property over its lifetime. So this is the big one, the big change that, as directed, to prevent future large-scale fill sites in the town of Essex. But it will allow for smaller scale fill to be brought in if a permit, of course, is approved. And then we've cleaned up a couple of other items, such as imposing a flat rate for the application fee. And of course, we've clarified that the proposed volume of fill must be on the engineered lot grading plan rather just on the application form. It's important to remind everyone that the fill and grade bylaw does not apply to properties where a building permit has been issued for construction of a structure or a building. So next in the report, you asked us to review the feasibility of terminating the current active fill and grade permits, for which there are currently 3 in our municipality. We've determined that the best course of action is to allow the sites to continue operating until their expiry date. However, should the property owners wish to apply for a new fill and grade permit, the applicant would be required to comply with the new bylaw. Should council adopt the amendments tonight, since those particular sites would then no longer comply with the bylaw as amended, they would need to seek site-specific exemption from council. Administration could not give them that permit by right if they were to come, should council approve tonight's amendments. So as Mayor Bondi indicated, the team involved in this report and the bylaw are here, not only our Chief Building Official, Kevin Carter, but also my colleagues, Director Malin-Druklo, as well as Director Gerard. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
We did have a registered delegate, Mr. Scott Spitaleri. Is he here? Okay, is there any comments from council before we go to our delegates? Councillor Verbeek.
Thanks through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the team that worked on this. No surprise, I'm really happy to have this back on the table again tonight. And of course, I'm going to be supporting it. We know when it first came to me, it was farmers that actually brought it forward. They were concerned about the damage being done to farmland by these fill sites. And so we know that it's damaging farmland, making plots unfarmable. We know that it's affecting the environment negatively. We know that it's affecting our roads and the people in our community. So I guess my first question to our chief building officer would be, what are the benefits of if we allowed of this activity, what are the benefits to our municipality?
Madam Mayor, the only benefit I could see is for the farmer himself. If he's in a flood prone area, you cannot get your crop in because anything north of Third is usually clay. So they lose a good portion of the season. If they were to build it up and make it a good viable farmland, that's about the only positive I could see for the community is with the farmer himself.
Thank you. And I guess part of what made me bring this forward initially was farmers that were saying, if it's really a problem with low-lying areas, then swales and tiling and filling in the low areas, not building up an entire site that's higher than all the farmland around it and the properties around it. I guess I'm just, I just want to say that I support this. I will be supporting it. I'll be happy to move it when the time comes, because it's the right thing to do. I got a call when I first brought this up from a girlfriend, said, have you been by my grandparents' property in a few years? And I said, no, I hadn't. And she said, well, after grandpa and grandma died, the aunt started made a deal with a construction company to let them do this fill under the guise of building up the property. It's been 15 years. That land will never be worked. It's just a bunch of hills that are growing mosquitoes and it's 20, probably 10 of a 50-acre plot that'll never be farmed again. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these spots. So I'll be happy to move this.
Questions from council to administration before we go to our delegates? Okay, seeing none, let's go to our delegates. Mrs. Ramsey, just go back to the delegation stand and push the mic, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Your Worship and the councilors present. My name is Debbie Ramsey, and I've been an Essex resident for more than 30 years. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the topic of fill and grade bylaw amendment. While I do appreciate all efforts, I must reiterate my continued concerns if this is not passed. As stated in my presentation on March 4th, 2024, at my residence, there's adjacent to a large-scale fill site. The operation adjacent to my farm have resumed, and outstanding issues of dust, noise, road conditions, shoulder degradations continues. The adjacent fill site property does have a higher grade at the back end of our property, and what causes the full drainage of their property onto my farm because of this. I can tell you that we have a section of our wheat underwater, especially after a rain. Who will be held accountable for this potential loss of crops? My understanding is that no property is allowed to drain onto another under the Drainage Act. And because of this fill and grade permit, this and the changing of the topography of the adjacent land, that we are now experiencing these flooding conditions. The bylaw and the amendment both speak to the grade be higher than adjacent neighboring properties, the road grade, and measures to control the stormwater runoff, as did the previous version. To date, the swale ditches are not working. I would recommend that a fill site of this magnitude have a retaining wall. Have them paid for the costs. They're draining onto us because of what they're doing to their property. Dust, traffic, and noise continue to be an issue. I've had trucks continue to block my driveway while waiting to enter onto the adjacent property. I understand that the start time should be at or after 7. Again, I've documented and captured that it has been earlier on numerous occasions since the new permit this year alone. Again, dust is a continued issue that directly impacts my health. With that being said, I have read current amendments to the bylaw 1799 that if there are adverse effects as direct result of the fill sites, that there is an authority to protect adjacent properties from adverse effects stemming from effective fill sites. Good. I'm happy to hear that. My only concern is who will enforce and how will it be enforced. I understand that the town has stated that there is a potential liability to terminate all fill and grade sites. But what about those that are directly impacted by the reality of those sites? Please recognize what liabilities or disadvantages and what are exceptional circumstances outside of my control are that we are experiencing because of living adjacent to a fill site. I still have great concerns over my property value with the proximity to a large-scale fill site. Considering what I witnessed and documented, there are many unknown factors and components as to the ultimate impact that this large-scale fill site will have on my health and my well-being of my person and my land. I have great concerns, and frankly, I mean no disrespect, but I'm wondering, again, the capabilities and the resources that will be monitored on all these sites based on what I've already experienced in these past 6 years. And I did say 6 years. I've already been told, excuse me, I'm going to tell you that the sheer volume that has already been dumped this year far exceeds what you've already stipulated in the new amendment. So, and I'm happy to hear that there's also a lifetime on that. However, at the end of their permit, does that mean again that I experience another 1,200 cubic meters? They've already had that and exceeded that, well over that. The length of time for this landfill has been from, again, 2018 till present. Again, my reality and my concern are that this will never end. I realize that it was stated in the previous discussion that it would be completed this year. However, no one, including the contractor, when asked directly by myself, will answer that question affirmatively. My recommendation is that all future sites have a requirement to inform the adjacent properties, notification to have a chance to have their voice concerns or suggestions, a proactive approach rather than a reactive one.
A little bit under 30 seconds.
I thank you, Your Worship, and fellow councillors for your time in hearing my concerns. I hope that my opportunities to speak to have been heard and that I have been listened to understand and not just to respond to the issues that I have stated. I hope that I have once again shed light on the direct impact and demonstrated the ill effects of being a resident to an adjacent large-scale fill site.
Invite our next delegation up to the podium. Mr. Martin and Mr. Keller. Together you have 10 minutes if you so desire.
Mayor Bondi, members of council and staff. My name is Dean Martin and I'm a farmer in the township here. I'm in the Harrow area and I happen to farm the farm next to the Walkers Road fill site. I'd like to talk to it from an agricultural and farm standpoint. My friend Dave here, he lives in the neighborhood and he will talk about their concerns. Many of my concerns have been addressed in that the bylaw is being looked at. My real concern, I mean, they've dumped thousands of truckloads of dirt. They've built up 15, maybe even 20 feet of dirt on at least 50 acres or 75 acres of the 100-acre farm. that farm is worthless now as far as agriculture. Whenever you, like Kevin mentioned that everything north of third and fourth concession is quite often clay, and that's true. But there's still 8 inches of topsoil clay. What that is subsoil. And it can't be farmed. I mean, imagine having your garden and somebody comes and puts the wickedest clay and dirt on top. Even 2 inches of clay being put on top makes it worthless for farming. And I've been doing this, I don't know, 5, 6 generations. I mean, I speak to you, this is my full-time job in my family. It's important to understand that the preservation of this land is for your tax base as well. Because the minute that's ruined, suddenly, NPAC comes out and will assess it at a lower value. You're not going to get the same value. The money you're getting from your fill permits won't even cover that. And that's forever. That's every year and forever. Lastly, I just want to say, the family or the people that own this, they're following the bylaw. They have been following the bylaw. Your bylaw has been poorly worded. It needs to have something in it about preservation of farmland and for the benefit of the property. That's a wording that needs to be put in it because there are lots of places where infill is very important. I mean, to build up a property around like a house, along a ditch for water control. I mean, I've done it myself. It really, improves property, but not when you do an entire 100-acre farm. I mean, that's just a dump site. I can't believe the province has has not become aware of this in some regard. So anyway, I will leave it at that, but preservation of farmland and benefit to the property should be worded in there to ensure that it's always a betterment. Go ahead, Dave.
And just about everything has been addressed. With our concerns is dirt and pollution, and we're getting a lot of asphalt dumped in the farm next to us that should not be there. It's a dump site, and the noise and dirt, the road's dirty all the time, and these things that we're concerned. I really recommend you do an amendment to this bylaw. I would love to see the site closed, and I'm also concerned what's going to be done with it when it's done, because I live right next door to this, me and my brothers. So, what do we do? And that's about all I have to say. It's been going on for 4 years, our dump site, and we're getting tired of it. So thank you.
We'd like to see it ended immediately rather than wait to the end of the permit. That would be our preference.
Have a seat, and delegations, just hang tight in case members of council have questions. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you coming. I'd like to mention that, Dean, you're award-winning farmer, are you not in the area? Yeah. So just to let you know, Dean knows what he's speaking of, and the Kellers and their neighbors, father and subsequent, they're all classic car enthusiasts. So you can just imagine their weekends entail washing cars all weekend to get the dirt and grime that's been dispersed upon them. My main concern here, besides the loss of 100 acres of prime or valuable farmland that keeps disappearing at a remarkable rate as we continue to build, is regarding our drainage in Harrow. As we use the Richmond to alleviate our excess water, the next resting spot for it to go through is this critical area where our water traveling north starts to turn south. And this is the crucial spot where it's turning, and this is where this land is getting piled up 20 feet against this crucial waterway, which I'm not an engineer when it comes to drainage, but I see it stalling the water leaving Harrow at this juncture if we continue to build up around this, what is actually a natural floodplain. This is where the extra water goes out and floods this low-lying area. It's natural, and I don't think we should be messing with Mother Nature to try and stop this from happening, because it's vital to, for my concern, my constituents in Harrow. We can't continue to let water pile up in there and wait for it to gravity to let it get back to the lake. So, I would like to see lying areas like this omitted from any fill. And don't get me wrong, I realize we're gonna have a lot of building going on and we're gonna have some place to put this dirt. Right now, all this dirt's coming from outside our community. And we need to look after our own and let them look after theirs. And that's pretty much what I have to say on it.
For you, Madam Mayor. To the delegates, Kellers? Is that, okay, thanks for coming. I didn't know who you were before now, but I went to see all the open sites that we have, a last drive-by park in front for a bit today. I agree with what you said. I just wish there was a way we could shut them down now. It's clear that the benefit is only to the property owner that is, you know, wreaking havoc on the roads, the community, the environment, et cetera, and also destroying the farmland. But I did say to our deputy mayor when I sat down, I said, boy, that site out on Walker Road, I feel awful for the people that have to operate farmland around it, because there's all of these working fields and they're at, you know, the different stages of farming and they're all nice and flat. And then there's this big monster of 100 acres out there that's just like, where does that water go? Does it affect the farmland around it? I did not know yous were coming, and I did not know that you were actually neighbors to this property, but that's what I came in and said. I said, oh, I feel for the people trying to farm around it.
You may answer the question, just go back to the podium and put the mic on. We are on YouTube and we want everybody to hear the full conversation.
Very important. When you have a heavy rain like we did last spring or last fall, I should say, of 8 inches of rain, you know, the water runs off of that. Harrow backs up down the Richmond, and it flows off into the surrounding areas. That's one of our concerns with the farm immediately next door, which is the Keller farm. And, you know, the water goes to the lowest point, and that's where it goes. And if Harrow's ends up being the lowest point, you're going to get it in Harrow.
Or any other members? Councillor McGuire Blaze and then Councillor Mady.
Thank you through the chair. So we have some issues and I hear them, but I have a couple of questions for administration. One, for these dump sites, we're talking about watershed from these 3 properties are going on to adjacent properties. What does administration do? Because even though we're putting this bylaw in place, we're still going to have watershed issues if we're allowing 1,200 cubic meters on a property. What does our administration have in place to prevent this from happening in the future? And what do they have in place now?
Thank you, Mayor Bondi, through you to Councillor McGuire Blaze. So there are a list of requirements for a grade and fill permit. I'm going to pass the mic in just a moment to our chief building official, the administrator, to the fill and grade bylaw. Amongst the requirements, a lot grading plan is required. Engineered drawings could potentially require a drainage scheme or stormwater management plan. So I'm going to pass the floor if I could, and CBO Carter can speak to those requirements before a permit is ever approved. It goes through rigorous review.
Madam Mayor, yes, it's quite extensive. An engineer's drawing needs to be done, it needs to be stamped. He has to back what his design. Obviously, it can affect abutting property owners. So swales are incorporated. The property can be higher than the neighbor's property. Just when it gets to the property line, it has to be equal. Keep in mind that a lot of times the property that is getting built up is nature's retention pond, meaning the ditches overfill, the that goes into that low-lying area, as well as the budding properties have always been dumping there. So that a lot of people feel, I never had flooding till now. That's not necessarily the case. So yeah, it's perimeter drainage that goes into always a municipal drain. What was drained there before will stay there. It's not going to offload onto other people's property. It will go directly into a municipal drain. That's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Gerard. So that's currently in place. So all of these people who are here who clearly have flooding issues, at one point, because what's done is done, they're going to want to increase, maybe they're going to want to put some dirt fill in their properties. I've been to a few sites where they desperately need fill. The property owner just doesn't want to do it. But when the property owner ends up leaving that location, the next owner, I promise you, will bring in fill. In two locations I can think of specifically that I've personally visited in the wet season are going to need more than 60 tons or 1,200 cubic meters of fill. I like now hearing that they will be able to come to council and they will be able to get the permission to add that extra fill. When they do, they will have to give lot grading, engineered drawings, and stormwater management plan in the new bylaw, like even with only 1,200 cubic meters. That's correct? And then finally, through the chair, I want to say we do need to be able to allow for fill in some areas. In our municipality, we're eventually going to get some industrial movement, and they're going to need a place to put the fill. The town of Essex, one day, probably soon, is going to need a place to dump their fill. I'd like you all to think about that, because without fill, there's no growth. You need some place to put it. You can't just say, and I'm glad that there's an outlet that they can come and they can say, we're gonna pick a specific site, and we can make an amendment at a different time. But just to keep in mind that dump sites are necessary. I know it's an unpopular opinion in this room right now, but dump sites are necessary for growth. And with the government pushing growth, we're going to need some place to put it. So down the road, whatever pedestal you're standing on right now, you might have to step off of it for a minute because we might have to say yes to somebody. So thank you.
Mayor Shepley.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So one of the concerns I heard was about the drainage and flooding out the neighbor's property. Do these lands have the ability to start anything through the Drainage Act and possibly have their flooding issues relieved through that mechanism?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, anybody has access to the Act. Anything that would require a new drain would require a Section 4 petition. Anything that would require improvements to existing would be a Section 78. Anybody looking to improve drainage for their property would contact the drainage superintendent of the town of Essex, who would point them in the right direction.
Thank you for that. So I don't know if you've tried it or not, but maybe. And the second part to that would be seeing as how we have a fill site that's on one of probably a very important drain. Has our drainage department been out there to inspect to make sure that this fill site hasn't done any damage to our drain?
Through the chair. So the drainage superintendent's role is to assess only the municipal drainage corridor and the working corridor associated with it, and anything adopted by bylaw by council for the Municipal Drainage Act. Our protection when it comes to private property and grading and drainage is this bylaw. So we rely on this bylaw, similar to how IRCA relies on their IRCA regulated area. We rely on this bylaw for changes to grade and fill.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So I do recognize the need for fill. I'm glad to know that we can do site specific, and it's my understanding that if we do get these larger scale ones that come in that are required and they are site specific, then they can show a need. We can also add more parameters to help better protect so we don't have a garbage fill site, basically. I'm glad that we're gonna have that option. My question would be to administration. Basically, right now, we don't know how many truckloads are going in and out. There's no cap. What I'm wondering is if there's, you know, I had spoken to, I think the average would be if it was a triaxle, say 60 triaxles, and if it's a tandem, it's gonna be approximately 100. Who's gonna count to be sure that we're at 60 or 100 when we give these permits out? Now, I just, because I know we have some issues right now with enforcement. And I recognize that we've tightened up on this bylaw, but who's gonna ensure that those numbers are met?
Good question. If the dirt's not bulldozed, you can certainly count the piles, which equates to a truck. However, before they even get to bringing in the trucks, we will have certified engineered drawings showing not only the grade, the finished grade, but also the volume. The math cannot lie. So it's going to show a certain area of that property. Say it's 10-acre property, it's going to be a quadrant. We're going to recognize that visually that is that quadrant. Or if it's the whole property, that'll equate to a certain depth. Have it be 6 inches a foot. We have the means to determine that. So it would be very easy for us to keep an eye on that, the volume.
Councilor Garen?
Good Chair. Yeah, so a couple of questions, just so I get my bearings straight here. On the fill permit itself, when someone's applying for that, do they tell us what the purpose of the permit is, whether it's for simply taking in dirt and dumping it for a period of time, and then, or if it's for leveling a farm field? And then do we base that purpose on the length of time that we approve the permit? That's one question.
With timing, it's obvious our permit expires year by year, that some of these projects are not going to be completed within that year. These are 5-6 year terms. What was the first part of that, Joe? Sorry.
Do they have to identify what the purpose of the application is?
Correct. Okay, got it. They do. And it's mostly, it's low lying, it's flooding, and they want to raise it up to make it viable land. But it's not mandated. If they just want to bring in fill, there's no means for us to stop the project, if that's more what you're getting at.
Sure. So that's what I was getting at. So right now, the way the current bylaw reads and the amended bylaw reads, they can use it for just not for farming purposes at all or leveling. They couldn't just take it in and have it dumped there.
Madam Mayor, yes, they could. It's 1,200 cubic meters again, as Deputy Mayor Rob Shepley said. It's not a lot. It's 60 loads. That's easy to correlate. Landscaping purposes, berms. It's not a large scale fill site whatsoever.
The chair, yeah. So my concerns are to Mayor Shepley's point is, how do we monitor 1,200 cubic? I mean, it's almost impossible to do. But to Councilor McGuire-Blaze's point, we do need places where we have to be able to take fill for whatever reason. Just out of curiosity, our neighboring municipalities, how are they dealing with fill and grade permits? Are they permitting them like we are? Is our amended bylaw kind of taking a little bit of our neighboring municipalities and taking that into consideration?
Mayor, within just our county, there's municipalities that don't allow it. There are others that do allow it. They regulate it, some unregulated, but they have a bylaw, but it's really wide open like our bylaw. There's no limit, no cap. There's always fees and securities and a permit process. And then there's other municipalities that don't allow it, period.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that is the issue with us taking in fill that isn't from our own municipality. We're getting it from everywhere, and I understand that. Now, the delegate was talking about wording, preservation of farmland and benefit to the property, but if we don't have anything in our bylaw or amended bylaw that speaks that would be speaking to basically farmer using it for the right reasons and not having it as a dump. Can Essex as a town, are we capable of identifying areas within our municipality where we could permit fill sites and where maybe some other areas we wouldn't permit fill sites?
Right now, the fabric on our GIS, the aerial photography, it shows Urca's wetland, which is directly north of this fill site on Walker Road. It abuts this property. However, this property itself does flood, but it's not in a regulated area. We could always look into that to look at an area that within our municipality that would be susceptible to grade and designate that. That's something we could certainly look at.
Council member that has wanted to speak once has spoken once, so I'm going to seek a motion and then we can speak to the motion. The motion will be that the development services report be received, that our delegations verbal reports be received, and that bylaw 2336 be read a first, second, third time and finally passed on June 3rd. So we'll get a motion on the table, and then if you want to speak again, Councillor Verbeek moves that, supported by Councillor Hammond. Now, if we want to speak to the motion, we may. Councillor Verbeek, you made the motion. You want to speak first?
Yep, just to, a couple of points through you, Madam Mayor, that came up in our discussion. But firstly, I think we need to remember that the spirit of this is to finally put an end to the big dumping sites. It's not to prohibit people from doing what they need to do for their properties. And that's I think we seem to be getting away from that. It's not to prohibit that. It's to protect the farmland and to stop these big, large scale dumping sites. Now, we know that this is not coming from within our community, but as the fellow councillor pointed out, eventually when we start booming again, like we're going to need somewhere for our fill to go when we're building. And that's awesome because that's what the regional landfill's for. And instead of property owners making profit by taking this stuff, our landfill can, which in return will come into our municipal coffers. So, and it'll also provide an alternate cover for the landfill so they don't have to purchase it. Instead, these construction companies will have to pay them to take it. So that seems like a win-win to me. Something that popped up at me tonight when I visited sites earlier was my time on the climate adaptation team. It kept coming up about we're going to see more vector carrying insects. We're going to see more mosquitoes. We're going to see more ticks. And I'm talking to friends in healthcare. The West Nile is already available, telling me I don't want to see my grandkid with West Nile because of mosquitoes. Every one of these sites had big weedy hills with low-lying areas and hills and weeds. And all I could think of when I saw that was, we're supposed to take care of our own properties to look for those, the water, the laying around, and they're all over these sites because of the nature of the dumping. So those are two thoughts that came to me today while we were discussing. And so, yeah, I support this, but I just want people to remember this isn't about going after homeowners and how they can take care of their own properties. If they need more than 60 loads to level it out, they just come to council, come to the Committee of Adjustment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple more questions now. Joe, remind me of a couple of things. What are we, as this, say the one particular, as these parcels of land are now unfarmable, are there zoning amendments to be made, or has there been zoning amendments to these properties prior to dumping? Will they be made after dumping has ceased? And those are my questions now.
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Hammond. So the use is not regulated under the zoning bylaw at this time. Under the agricultural zoning category, this use is not permitted per se. So the fill bylaw, in essence, is allowing for fill sites and grading, alteration of grade on any property. So to Councillor Guerin's question earlier, I think on geographically speaking, can we regulate the location of these? I'm going to take that back with us and speak with our manager of planning services and the planning team in general. I think we can do that geographically through the zoning bylaw, because the agricultural property, as several of us have discussed and stated, is prime agricultural land. And hearing you loud and clear, you want to protect that land from fill sites. So I'm going to take that back and think about how we can regulate geographically speaking, and also recognize that, yes, indeed, to Councillor McGuire Blaze's point, fill sites are a part of development. So whether it's fill from external projects or within the town of Essex, where would they be permitted? And that's all done under land use and zoning.
I have a question. What do we do now for sites that we thought were getting clean fill, but they have chunks of concrete? What is the remedy now? Like, they were supposed to, our fill permit was clean fill, and now it has hunks of concrete in it. So what is the ramification?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's a good question. We're not an expert in building a bylaw in terms of determining what is contaminants and what isn't. We certainly know what inert material is. Inert material is, from my understanding, concrete. Things such as wood, rubber, plastics cannot be buried, but concrete certainly can. But we don't have the expertise to determine that. The bylaw does say that, and my understanding through the new regs with the ministry is the source of fill needs to be tested before it even gets excavated and delivered, that it itself is not contaminated. For us to have the resources to sit on a job site with 10,000 trucks coming and going, we don't have that resource to see what's coming in, busted concrete and so forth. That's the real of it.
And so further to that, when we go forward and property owners can bring in 1,200 cubic meters, how do we know that it's not contaminated? Even, I know it's only 1,200 cubic meters, but how do we know that that's going to be clean fill?
You, Madam Mayor, that's a very good question as well. We can make it where you dump it before you dose it. We got to feel it, touch it, smell it. I think that's what we're going to incorporate. So if we see contaminants, we're not going to let it get dosed and buried. We're going to ask it for site specifically to be cleaned up, and we'll go from there.
So with that being said, I think this needs to come back again. I will be supporting the recommendations tonight, but I think it needs to come back again, even being more stringent. We just had a presentation on source water protection, but all of the efforts on source water protection and everything else could be wiped out if we're receiving contaminated soil, even if it's only 1,200 cubic meters. So I want to move forward, but I think we need to do more on this file. I also want it to be known that this Council Verbeek in particular tried to champion this in the last term of council to stop it. But there wasn't political appetite at that time, and I think we were almost hoping too that the current fill sites would be done, but they're still not done. So if we do not vote in favor of stopping it tonight, then we're going to be having this conversation in the next term of council. because I believe these proponents are getting paid to take the soil. So I would like to, I think, do we have what, Counselor Garen, you already spoke, or you have your hand up? Okay. And, okay, Director Malanjukulo, and then if you have not spoke to the motion. Okay.
Before we move on to moving the motion, I just noticed an issue in the bylaw 17. So I'm just looking to move it with an amendment saying that subsection 4.3 is actually added to the bylaw instead of deleted and expunged, with the wording set out in the proposed bylaw, and that all other sections of section 4 are renumbered to account for the addition, and then subsection 4.4A, formerly 4.3A, is replaced with the wording in there. So it's creating the same effect that council would like, but it's an amendment to make sure that the wording is correct in the proposed bylaw.
Garen?
Yeah, I just want to circle back to this 1,200 cubic meters in lifetime. What I want to know what's considered restriction to be imposed by of no more than 1,200 cubic meters of fill on a property over its lifetime. What is considered a property? Could that be a farmer who owns 50 acres or a farmer that owns 250 acres? Is that considered one property?
Madam Mayor, yes, it's any property within our municipality is regulated with maximum 1,200. Keep in mind, we still have a maximum height of 39 inches from the crown of the road. So we have capped the limit for the height. We have capped the limit for the volume.
I guess what I'm asking is I couldn't tell you if 1,200 cubic meters is a lot or not. I'm not a farmer. I would never have any use for this. I'm urban, but if I had 250 acres, I needed to raise my property, and somebody else has 100 acres, 1,200 the same. I may need more than 12.
On the property is yes. I think what it would amount to is the parcel register. So you are correct in that it doesn't the size of the property doesn't affect the bylaw at all. It could be any size of property. So it applies to property regardless of the size.
To the mayor, so that's all I was wondering is like, is, in your opinion, Mr. Carter, is 1,200 cubic meters a sufficient amount of fill to do for anyone who owns 1 acre of property versus 250 acres of property?
Through your worship, yes and no. 1,200 for the average farmer or property owner is more than suffice. If it's a large acreage, the answer would be no. But the vast majority, it would fit quite well, the 1,200 cubic meters.
So yeah, I was just wondering if, like, I'm in the rare instance that a larger property owner, an owner with a larger property wanted more than 1,200. We're kind of tying it to lifetime 1,200 only. So these sites we're already talking about likely already have 1,200 on them. They went to reapply, they're not going to get it anyways. And then anybody who needed greater than 1,200, let's say that farmer with a larger property would probably have to prove they need the 1,200. But right now, we're not permitting it at all based on the amendment. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to go back on the question about contaminants or contaminated soil. So back in 2021, council adopted an amendment to the original bylaw to allow for and to ensure that the permit holders submit to administration written certification as a part of the permitting process, written certification by a geotechnical engineer or similarly qualified person, both prior to the issuance of a permit and upon completion of the work, a description of the proposed fill, including a list of the sources of the fill, and a geotechnical analysis to the content and quality of the fill. That is the 2021 amendment in order to protect the property from receiving contaminated soil.
Beatty, then Deputy Mayor, then Counselor McGuire, Blaze, and Counselor Allard.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor. So, can you take me through what somebody that needed more fill would have to do? Like, there's still a pathway for them. They'd have to come to council through a variance or something. What's the pathway for somebody that would need more? Like, we're not locking them at 100, right?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Essentially, that the 1,200 cubic meter cap is through the permitting process through cloud permit that we could not approve administratively. Any site-specific exemption or request for additional for that property over a lifetime would have to come to council for approval. And as discussed earlier with council through Councilor McGuire Blaze, the application permitting process is the same. In other words, what the requirements are the same.
Thank you. As a follow-up. So as a variance, everybody within 120 meters would be notified? No?
So it would be under the grade and fill bylaw, not the zoning bylaw. There are no notification requirements under the grade and fill bylaw.
Thank you. So I'm still fuzzy on the process. If I wanted 200, if I wanted more than what the limit was going to be, I would come to your department. You would tell me, no, I can't get a permit for that. Then I would just register to come to council, and it could be done in one night without any involvement from anybody else.
For you again, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct. Likely a report from administration indicating, what the results of the review of the permitting process or the permit and the requirements and the documents and et cetera that have been reviewed by certain parties at the town or IRCA if required. But that is the process in a nutshell.
Please.
Mayor, Councilor Mady asked my question and got the answers I was looking for. I do have one follow-up. Is there a path to appeal this process? What I'm wondering is are we looking at, once we put this in place, is there a path then for a developer? If they don't like our bylaw, we say no. Is there another course for them? Like, I'm just trying to think outside the box. What are we looking at? Is there going to be a legal? Can they go to the province and go above us, so to speak, and still get this approved?
Further research on it, I don't think there is, because it's something that's discretionary to the municipality, but I could take it away and do further research if you'd like me to.
Please.
Thank you to the chair. So I just want council to know that I ran the bylaw past IRCA to get their opinion on it because it does run along the Richmond drain. IRCA had no problem with the current bylaw and they have no problem with the new proposed bylaw. So I just wanted to let you know, just because IRCA was brought up a couple of times. As for the contamination of fill, so we don't require any soil samples until the end.
Prior to and after.
So before we soil sample and then they start dumping and then 3-4 years later, we do a soil sample again.
From my understanding, that is the process. However, the amendment since 2021, I'd like our CBO to speak to if we've received any applications with contaminated soil identified in the application.
Proponent is to give us documentation prior to delivery on the site from the source itself that it's not contaminated. We have received those documentations. At the closing of these sites, they are to retain their engineer to do sampling of that project and submit their report before we close out the documents and release their securities.
Chair, so we've seen the photos. We know the soil's contaminated on, in County Road 12. Okay, I'm going to use that one for example. So we know, we have the photos, we know it's contaminated. They're going to close out their application. You're going to request a soil permit. CT Soils, somebody is going to go out there. They're going to do some sampling on the property, they're gonna find that it's contaminated. Now what? Do they have to truck it out and put these people through years of removing the contaminated soil?
Madam Mayor, we don't know if it's contaminated or not. We're assuming, we're all assuming. Inert material is a lot of things. Concrete is inert. You're allowed to bury that in the ground. So because we see concrete or so-and-so, it doesn't necessarily qualify as contaminated. We have to get the report from the engineer. And the tail end of your question, that I don't know the answer about what happens if it is actually contaminated. What does the town, the property owner, who's liable? That I'm not too sure.
You further through the mayor. So I'm wondering, and we're going to pass this bylaw. I like reading the room where it's going to pass, but I might suggest, is it possible for us to include in there, because even in 60 or 1,200 cubic meters, it could still happen. And if we end up giving permissions down the road to an actual dump site, it could happen. Is it possible for us to say, at our discretion, we want 4 soil checks a year, and the a resident needs to pay for it, like the dumper needs to pay for it, and that's paid through us, but it's included in their fee. Like it's already included. So if it's going to cost us $4,000 to do 4 checks in a year, then that's included in the middle of the fee. And we don't give them an update of when we're going to do our soil checks. We just pick a time and we say, hey, we would like a soil check today. Our engineer is coming out. Is that something that we can do to protect us from soil contaminations in the future? Because if they come back and they find that what is being accused of, propane tanks and garbage and the whatnot, now we have to ask them to remove it. I don't see how we can let them keep it there. That we've essentially created a second dump. So to prevent that in the future, is there something like what I just suggested? Is that a possibility?
Through the chair. So contamination is a very broad one. Okay, so I mean, under the Environmental Protection Act, many things are considered a contaminant as long as it poses an adverse effect to the environment. Those types of things do not fall under the legislation of the municipality. They fall under the legislation of the Environmental Protection Act, which is the Ministry of Environment. Therefore, if there is suspected contaminant within any site within the town of Essex or any site area, you are to report it to the Ministry of Environment, not to the municipality. And many of these things are actually governed by the excess soils regulations passed by the provincial legislature, which are also enforced by the Ministry of Environment. So I would recommend that if there is contaminated soil issues, that they be investigated by that authority and not the municipality.
Please ask it, Brian.
Thank you. So I'm wondering what else can be done at this table for Councilor McGuire Blazes and myself. I have the same concerns regarding contaminated soil. I think we might have to discuss that and come back to that. Because right now we have a lot with the one current motion. Councilor Verbeek, yeah, you will speak last to the motion and then I will call the question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the amendment, the update in 2021 to do the testing, to have the testing required and the results brought to us was just that, something initiative of council at the time, because there wasn't an appetite to put an end to the sites. So I think I agree 100% with both of you. We look at that again and put some more teeth behind testing the soil and making them pay for it. I am agreeable to the amendment to the motion that I moved by Director Malandrucolo. I'm wondering if there's a way we could pull the piece out that that allows the extensions to just remain as is without investigating a little further. Like I'm really happy. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to put a stick in the spokes. I want to see this go tonight, but I also, is there a way we can look at each one of these individual sites and the outstanding time on their permits?
We looked into the ability to cancel the permits prior to their expiry date. And the liability that the town will incur if they try to do that is significant and not something that I think the town should undertake at this time.
Thank you, Counselor Verbeek. I'm going to, oh, sure. Okay, Counselor Verbeek has requested a recorded vote. Yeah, Counselor Hammond seconded it. And my last comment is, I don't think good farmers want to bury concrete. They wouldn't want to have to deal with it years later. Okay, so we have a recorded vote question and you will do the roll call.
Counselor Verbeek has requested a recorded vote. Counselor Verbeek, how do you vote? Counselor Verbeek supports. Counselor Allard, how do you vote? Counselor Allard supports. Counselor McGuire Blaze, how do you vote?
Support.
Counselor McGuire Blaze supports. Counselor Guerin, how do you vote?
Support.
Counselor Guerin supports. Counselor Hammond, how do you vote? Counselor Hammond supports. Counselor Meady, how do you vote? Support. Counselor Meady supports. Mayor Bondi, how do you vote? Mayor Bondi supports. Deputy Mayor Shepley, how do you vote?
Support.
Supports. That's it's my turn. Deputy Mayor Shepley supports. That's 8 in favor and 0 opposed.
You could stay if you wish. Economic Development, Essex Tourism Events Fund application, looking for a mover and a seconder that the Economic Development report be received and that council approve the distribution of $1,000 of funding to the Rotary Club of Essex from the Essex Tourism Events Fund. Looking for a mover and a seconder on. Moved by Councilor McGuire Blaze, supported by Councilor Allard. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried. Moving on to Economic Development, County Road 50, Tourism Promotion. We will have a mover and a seconder, and then Mr. Silvera can speak. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the Economic Development report be received for information. Councilor Meady, Councilor Guerin, and welcome, Mr. Silvera.
Council, through you, Madam Mayor. At the last regular meeting of council, in discussion from a notice of motion presented by Mayor Bondi, administration has gone back and came back with a report to council regarding some of the initiatives that we're going to for those businesses affected by the construction along County Road 50. All of those initiatives are outlined in the report, mostly marketing focused and direct business support on content creation to help draw visitors to their businesses. We've been a little bit creative here to go get additional funding from Tourism Windsor Essex Peely Island to support some of these initiatives. Well, the one initiative in particular, which is the Blackburn digital media campaign, which we will be doing. These initiatives will happen over the next couple of months, but we're getting started as soon as council approves the motion tonight.
Thank you for your speedy return on that report. Councilor Hammond?
Yeah, it looks like some help to these struggling businesses. My question is, have we reached out and gotten any feedback from our businesses regarding these ideas, and any feedback regarding?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So there's no feedback necessarily on these initiatives presented tonight, as they need to be presented to council first, and then we go back to the businesses to kind of let them know what we're going to be doing. But there has been discussions from our department with our agritourism ambassadors, who are the majority of are on County Road 50, and we've had those discussions back and forth with them on some of the impacts related to construction and some of the supports that we're able to provide to them. and their comments were worked into our ideas and presented here tonight.
Answer your question, Counselor Hammond. I did take this report and I sent it to the group that met at Crew Winery. I had working with Bernie Gorski and he sent it to them, so they're all aware of our efforts and I didn't hear any additional feedback. So they're all unaware of what we're doing. Any other comments? All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to legal and legislative services, Little Right Drain and Extension, that the following 3 members of the Drainage Board, Janice, Percy, and Tiffany, be appointed to sit as members. Needing a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor McGuire Blaze, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Planning, release of securities for Jacana Residential Subdivision in Ward 1. Needing a mover and a seconder that the planning report be received and that performance securities for the residential subdivision be released to the proponent. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley, I have one quick question. Is this the final securities? Is there any more being held?
Madam Mayor, this is the remaining. There will be nothing left in securities.
Thanks, Mayor. Just have a quick question. Just so this one's finally done. 61 units, and we gave approval back in, I think it was 2006. Do we recall when they actually physically started to put roads in and infrastructure and stuff, and maybe when the first house actually went in? Just trying to get an idea of how long it takes to actually get from square one. And I'll take an email. It's fine. Maybe just let council know in an email even. Just curious. I mean, we've had questions before in the past where it's like, seems to be taking long for this subdivision, and we've heard administration say before, sometimes it's 25 years, sometimes it's 30 years before we get to the stage of the final payout. I was just kind of curious. I'll take an email, doesn't matter.
We believe that through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Guerin, we believe it's 2018 to 2019. We will certainly follow up in writing. Thank you.
All in favor? And that is carried. Planning, proposed zoning bylaw amendment for housing. We will go to Director Chadwick.
Thank you once again, Madam Mayor and Council. So as you'll recall, a statutory public meeting was held on May 21st to present proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw to implement changes to housing regulations because of not only Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, but also to allow alternative housing types in specific areas of the town. So the report before you summarizes the proposed zoning amendments. We've also included the May 21st public presentation for quick reference. We've itemized the comments received and the responses. We also discuss in the report how the proposed amendments conform with policies such as not only at the province, but also region and our municipal local planning policies. And finally, we've included the bylaw amendment itself for your decision-making tonight. So as a result, actually, the bylaw amendment itself that's been added to the report has been amended. So as a result of our public and agency consultation, the slight revisions from what was presented on May 21st, for your knowledge, is first to allow for further consultation to occur between the town, IRCA, and the landowners of One Clees Beach surrounding the year-round occupancy of the existing developed portion of the property. So those proposed amendments have been removed from the zoning bylaw amendment. That is so that a solution can be developed, and then following that solution, the site-specific zoning amendment can be applied for. Secondly, what we removed as well to address concerns with parking reductions for the Essex nonprofit lands. We heard that that was also a concern. Administration has therefore met with the Essex nonprofit group, and they will be submitting some alternative designs to actually accommodate all required parking on site. Therefore, an amendment would not be required. So we removed that from the proposed amendment that you see before you. So in closing, we're very proud to present you with the proposed zoning bylaw amendments tonight. We hope you see this as an opportunity in response to the province's call to build more homes. Thank you.
Mover and a seconder, we'll get the motion on, and if there's any comments, we can take them then. That planning report be received and that bylaw 2332 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on June 3rd. Moved by Counselor Hammond, supported by Counselor Guerin. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Recreation and Culture Life Saving Society Affiliate Recognition 2023. We have Ms. Cakebread here tonight. Welcome.
Your Worship. I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Unfortunately, this year we placed second in two of the categories that we won previously. I know, Doug, you're upset. But I think what's really interesting to know is that our numbers were actually higher than last year and the year before that. We've exceeded. And you look at the competitiveness within those categories. We are a small municipality within that category. Woodstock, who beat us, is more than double our size. Most of the organizations that are in those categories are much bigger than us. One of the nice things is very evident in the size of the program that we're running is we are one of the very few municipalities that are not experiencing staff shortages when it comes to on-deck personnel. We have right now the luxury of actually turning some people away because of how strong and big our program is. The pool operates 95 to 105 hours a week. Recovery from COVID has been exceptional, going from above and beyond our pre-COVID numbers. So, for example, during COVID, we might have had 1 or 2 or 3 teaching lines happening. We now have, 7, 8, or 9 teaching lines going. So we're really kind of running out of space with the use that we have. Our population boom is really impacting us. But we also know that we have a significant number of people that come to us from outside of the town of Essex that are in neighboring communities, individuals that came to us because we were the only ones open for a period, but because of the quality of our programs and the options available, continue to come to us even though we're at a further distance than maybe their own home pool. So that's really great to see in terms of what we're offering. Our feedback is phenomenal, session after session, and our training and programs offering both internal and external have always been well supported. So although we did not necessarily get the trophy this year, I was told by the director in Woodstock that it was because of a neighboring community closing their program down that he slipped past us this year. So he said he was, he's also stolen 2 of my staff, so it's a little competitive. On another related through life saving, to point out right now our Swim to Survive program, which services our grade 3s and our grade 7s. We currently have in the 23-24 year 18 schools, and we put almost 900 children through that program. That's bigger than any other municipality in the area. We're doing more schools and more students. Generally, those schools are assigned based on their location within the municipalities. We are currently taking in schools from Windsor, Amherstburg, and LaSalle that are not able to get into their local pools. So big numbers for that one as well. So I think we have good showing. We have an exceptionally large first aid program as well. When you look at the first aid category, we're the only municipality that comes into the first aid category at all. So that just shows you how much we're out there and doing and the programs that we're running. So we're pretty proud of that.
Comments from members of council? My daughter was in the Swim to Survive this year, and it was pretty amazing. And when you think about it, this could be the only time that some of their classmates actually swim. So it's really important work you do. Do you have a motion already on the table? Yeah. No. Needing a motion to approve, receive the report for public information. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Allard, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. June is Parks and Rec month. So we'll go back to Cynthia again.
Thank you, Your Worship. This again is an annual event for us. We've really built upon our previous years, looked at ways to offer more opportunities and ideas to get our residents active. This year, we run our June as Recreation and Parks Month, kind of in cooperation with the participation activities as well, because we did get a small grant in order to offer a number of those free programs over the course of the month, which is just always a nice bonus. But again, we did our kickoff yesterday. We had over 140 people participating in our free activity day and kickoff, as well as the free swim. We have a number of different events. I think you can see with the calendar that we produced and provided. That calendar went to every household in the town of Essex, as well as neighboring communities that we know have populations that use our facilities. Overall, we know how busy we are and how we continue to grow in all of our programs and program facilities. Based on our current registration right now for our summer, we are looking to exceed the programs that we did last year in our summer, and our day camp has grown to the point that now we're splitting it into 2 separate locations and taking our older kids over into our new squad camp, where they'll do a little more focused leadership and development that gets them away from mostly playing with the little kids. But as well, bringing them back, they will still swim at our pool, they'll still do field trips, they'll still do the special events and things like that. So overall, very busy, and we like to see June as Recreation Month give the opportunity for people to try out our programs and our facilities and different options to get physically fit and active that they may not have tried without the chance to do it in a try-it format. So we do know we get a lot of people that try out one of our free programs and then continue to attend. I think our pickleball program is one that reflects that annually, that we have a day where people can come and try it out, and we see more and more people drifting towards that activity and things like that.
So I'll read out the proclamation, and then Mayor Bondi can get a mover and a seconder. And that Recreation and Culture Report 2024-02, entitled June is Recreation and Parks Month 2024, prepared by Cynthia Cakebread, Manager, Recreation and Culture, dated June 3rd, 2024, be received, and that Council proclaim June as Recreation and Parks Month for the town of Essex by adopting the following resolution. Whereas in the town of Essex, we are fortunate to have a variety of recreation and park systems providing countless recreational opportunities for residents and visitors from all around the world. And whereas recreation enhances quality of life, balanced living, and lifelong learning, helps people live happier and longer, develops skills and positive self-image in children and youth, develops creativity, and builds healthy bodies and positive lifestyles. And whereas recreational participation builds family unity and social capital, strengthens volunteer and community development, enhances social interaction, creates community pride and vitality, and promotes sensitivity and understanding to cultural diversity. And whereas parks, open space, and trails provide active and passive outdoor recreation opportunities, help maintain clean air and water, and promote stewardship of the natural environment. And whereas recreation, therapeutic recreation, and leisure education are essential to the rehabilitation of individuals who have become ill or disabled or disadvantaged or who have demonstrated antisocial behavior. And whereas benefits provided by recreation programs, services, and parks and open space reduce healthcare and social service costs, serve to boost the economy, economic renewal, and sustainability, enhance property values, attract new business, increase tourism, and curb employee absenteeism. And whereas all levels of government, the voluntary sector, and private enterprise throughout the province participate in the planning, development, and operation of recreation and parks program, services, and facilities.
So looking for a mover and a seconder that the Recreation and Culture Report be received and that the proclamation be adopted. Councillor Hammond, Councillor Mady, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Therefore, I, Mayor Sherry Bondi, in recognition of the benefits and values of recreation and parks, do hereby designate the month of June as Recreation and Parks Month in the town of Essex. Thank you. Keep up the great work. And there's always next year. Yeah. Community Services, Colchester Safety Audit Council update. Director Morissette.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi, and through you to council. Last year, 2023, through Resolution 2306-259, administration was directed to come back with a report about Colchester and receive a safety audit to determine the safe practices that are going on at the harbor, so and the beach. So with that, we undertook the report last year and we did work with the consultants, and the consultants overall came back with very positive feedback of the operations that we have. They did provide a couple of recommendations that I'll take council through. So in terms of priority concerns, so these are like the higher level things that they think that we need attention to. They did want us to designate a safe swimming area. So they're looking for us to clarify where those swimming areas are. So that can be done through signs, buoy lines, buoy markers, or any combination of these. And the second recommendation they had was to install life-saving stations in designated areas. So once I'm done going through these, our Assistant Manager of Parks and Facilities, Vince Murphy, will take you through the actions that they're doing right now and where we're going to go with that. So those are the primary concerns. So the primary recommendations that they had was mostly involving signage. So revise the current beach signage, and then they provided in the report a bunch of information on what should be included in that signage. They're asking for us to conduct a review of the public access pier. And again, that's a lot of it's related to signage again. Ensure beach signage is updated, and ensure frequent lake water testing is completed and posted. So we do the testing on a regular basis through the health unit. Every week we get that testing and the results. And if we do have a fail or a warning, then we would get retesting done later in the week. And then the thing that wasn't happening was that we weren't posting it visibly to the public at the beach. So now we have a process where that's actually being posted for viewing to beachgoers. Then in terms of secondary recommendations, again, signage updates with a beach map, and then provide life-saving station rescue equipment logs. And this would include beach raking. So right now we do a lot of these things, but we're just not actually logging it. So if there was any sort of claim or liability in the future, we would be able to prove our process and what we've done in terms of maintenance. So with that said, that's the bulk of the report, and I'll turn it over to Vince Murphy, our Assistant Manager, for what things we're doing currently.
Mayor, Bondi, members of council. With the beach audit and the concerns that were brought forward, we ended up purchasing some life safety stations. They'll put life safety stations on both sides of the beach. And then we will start working on our signage to make sure that all the recommendations that were brought for signage, to that the beach goers can be notified of the beach conditions. The life safety stations, they can also be notified where the defibrillator stations are, emergency first aid, contact information if there's an emergency that happens on the beach. They'll be directed to go to the kiosk. All those signages will be trying to update it within the 2024 season. And like I said, there's quite a bit of signage that we're going to have to review. We're trying to look at best practices to try and implement as many of those as possible.
Something further?
Now, one other thing I just want to point out in the report, it does speak to the pier and the safety of the pier. So again, added signage for warnings for the pier as well. They did talk about the rough waves that can come in on the pier. And one of the recommendations was to investigate the cost of having a railing system along the entire pier. So we do know that that would be an expensive project, but we are going to investigate the cost of getting that. And then we can look at that and determine future outcomes if that's something that council wishes to do. Again, that was a recommendation. A lot of these things are recommendations, so we don't necessarily have to implement everything, but something for us to consider nonetheless. And one other thing to point out is all of these things that we are looking to do right now, we are confident that it's going to be able to fall within our operating budget. So we don't expect any sort of impact to our operations. However, if there is some sort of impact, then we would be looking at bringing that to future budget for council's consideration for implementation.
Then Councillor Verbeek, then Councillor Hammond, Councillor Guerin.
Through you, Madam Mayor. First off, we spent the weekend out at the beach this weekend. Looks fantastic out there. My question is if you could maybe let us know what is life safety station consists of for us and anybody watching, just so that we're aware.
Yeah, so these are the life safety rings. They'd be mounted to like a 4x4 post. They'll be clearly identified. They're like the throw station that you throw in the water attached to a rope.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I definitely, I see the need for a lot of these the signs that are being recommended. I'm just wondering because I'm not a big fan of sign pollution and putting, 20 new signs down at the beach. Has there been consideration to maybe consolidating some of the messages they need you to get across into 1 or 2 signs?
Yes, some of the signs, sorry. Yes, some of the signs that are already there, they were obviously installed during COVID. So some of them still has large, the large Wayfair signs. We're gonna update those ones with the current messages that were recommended by the Life Saving Society and utilize the same areas.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor. Jake, when it comes to the railing that you're gonna look into, please keep in mind the fishing that goes off pier. We're gonna have a big event this weekend. I can only see railings being detrimental to that event. Hopefully, when they're assessing the railings, they can take that into consideration. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, yeah, Councilor Beak hit the point I was gonna talk about. So yeah, I guess if we can look to alternatives to signage, I don't know if we can look into maybe, can we develop something down there that's maybe more user-friendly app or something where people can go to it and it shows our beach and where everything is, where the safety things are, just any alternative to signs.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So further to what Assistant Manager Murphy was talking about, so we do know that signage is something that's obviously needed as part of this report. So we're looking at making like a couple larger signs with more content on it, rather than having sporadic signs with separated, convoluting all the information. So we want it to look clean. We want it to be there with the information that's required as part of the report. But we are looking to consolidate everything into as few signs as possible with following the recommendations of the report.
Baby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I love the report. I think it's great. I know the staff's going to do a great job on where they put the signage and keep our beach looking great. And it's important to note that Colchester Beach, it's been recognized as one of the best beaches in Ontario. We got voted #1 in the County of Essex. They're doing a great job out there. And I think this report actually really highlights the great job that our staff and our town's been doing on that beach. And even if you take a trip through County Road 50 and you ask any of the business owners there, they'll tell you that since we've improved that beach, the whole attitude of County Road 50 has changed, and how friendly it's become, and how much of a tourist attraction it's become. And a lot of them are contributing directly to that beach and park. So I love the great work, and please continue.
Thank you.
Just to Councilor Director Marasu, great job on the beach and the park, always. I'm wondering about the buoys that would they be weighted down or would they tethered across?
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So we do have the buoy system out in the water right now. So we're looking at re-implementing that and making sure it's fully active. And then as part of it with the signage, they did say that signage is a good option for designating where the locations of the swimming area are. So we'd be looking at adding kind of a map where I think the recommendation in the report said 25 meters out. So we'd kind of draw what that would look like on the map so that people can actually see that, but it wouldn't have the actual floating rope that would delineate it. It would be more the farther out buoys that would show boaters not to come into that area. And then the map would be kind of the designation showing that.
I think it's great. It's good work. I'm wondering if we could start a log, if administration could start a log of the health units releasing of the beach testing. And then we could get like an email at the end of the season saying, our beach was closed this many days. Cause I think, I know the health unit posts it all the time, but it'd be nice to have it all for us at the end of the day. And we could see if all the things we're doing, like with the geese, are actually helping with water quality. Director?
Mayor Bondi, so they do actually have 2 years of data on the health unit website. So if you pull up the Colchester beach, you can actually see that data, but we can send a summary to council at the end of the season as well.
Thank you. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Maybe, Counselor Hammond, all in favor? And that is carried. 1010, Parks and Facilities, ice rental increase for 2024-2025 season. Let's get a motion on the table and then we'll discuss it. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the Parks and Facilities report be received and that council approve a 1.5% rate increase for all ice rentals beginning August 1st, 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Counselor Hammond and Director Morissette.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. I'm actually going to pass this off to Manager Klee, who is also with us this evening.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Bondi, I'm bringing forward a report to council on an increase for the ice rental rates for our upcoming ice season. We sent out a letter to all of our user groups in early April, notifying them that this report will be coming for council. We made them aware of the meeting then after the initial notification, just to let them know if they wanted to come forward, that they had time to bring anything forward. We have yet to hear any complaints or any issues from any of our user groups, just to make sure that they had enough time to make sure that when they put out their registration requirements that that this increase is included within that. But we compared our ice current rates with the local municipalities in our neighboring area, and we are in pretty competitive within our ice rental rates. So we felt that a 1.5% increase would be something that council would like to hear to vote on. If you have any questions.
Okay, any questions from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. 1011, Community Services Special Event Notice, Harrow Chamber Open Streets, looking for a mover and a seconder that council approve a temporary noise exemption from 4:30 to 8:30 on Friday and Friday, June 28th and Friday, September 27th for the Harrow Chamber Open Streets, and that council approve closing King Street between Erie and Queen on both of those nights as well. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Hammond? Did you move that? Counselor Allard? Any questions? All in favor, and that's carried. Community Services Soapbox Derby. That Community Services report be received and that council approve a temporary noise exemption with accordance to our noise bylaw from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, June 22nd for the Soapbox Derby, and that council approve closing King Street between Erie and Queen and between Victoria and King on the Soapbox Derby Day. Counselor Verbeek, Counselor Allard, any questions? All in favor, and that is carried. Community Services 2024-18, Daisy and Co. 5 Steps for a Cure. That Community Services report be received and that council approve closing King Street West and King Street West from Queen Street to Victoria Street and Victoria Street from King Street to Wellington Street, and the rest that is listed for the 5 Steps for a Cure. Looking for a mover and a seconder on this. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Counselor Mady, any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Special events notice. Holy Spirit Festival, that the Community Services report be received and that council approve the Holy Spirit Festival for significant event status for their special occasion permit on June 29th and June 30th. And council approve closing Secord Street between Clark Street and Sinisac Street West between Roseboro Road and Victoria North Street between Sinisac and Munger West, and Munger West between Roseboro and Victoria Street North and Roseboro Road. In the Portuguese Club will have this map on their social media. Between Munger Avenue West and Sinisac Street West and Harrow between 1 and 2. and 3 and 4 for the Holy Spirit Festival. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions? Yes, Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you through the chair. So with this one, there, it needs to come to council for approval because of alcohol on municipal property. Are they closing the streets and having alcohol in the municipal property?
Bonnie, so they are not having any alcohol on municipal property. It's a requirement from the AGCO that they have municipal approval for their own private property because it's a special occasion permit that they're applying for. So it's a requirement from the AGCO for municipal authorization.
Sorry, through the chair. So why do they need our approval for our property if it's only on their property?
Through the mayor, I'll speak to this. So it's actually coming to council because of the road closure. Otherwise, it wouldn't come to council. The AGCO so we're appointed to be the designates for the AGCO. As designates for the AGCO, we can provide the approval without going to council on the liquor sales because of some new amendments to the law. So it's only coming to council today because of the road closure. Otherwise, the approval would have came through council as designates for the AGCO as special event status.
So correct me if I can't ask this here. Because this is here, does that mean that we could apply to have a closed street and liquor on the street? Is that something that the town of Essex can do?
Mayor Roddy, we would have to get an application and discuss it with our special events committee. I'd have to also refer to our municipal alcohol policy to make sure the regulations that would be involved and see if those are designated areas, because I'm not sure if they're specifically designated, but we may be able to come back and get council approval for those specific locations. So if that's of interest, that's something I'll have to do some more research about.
And that is carried unanimously. Which one are we on? 10:15, special events notice, Our Lady of Fatima Festival, that community services report be received and that council approve Our Lady of Fatima Festival for a significant event status for their special occasion permit. Needing a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Allard, questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Community services, lease amending agreement between the 73s Hockey Club for sign advertising at the Essex Center Sports Complex. Needing a mover and a seconder that the community services report be received and that the town of Essex amend the pricing on Appendix A to bylaw 2168. We'll get the motion on and then needing a mover and a seconder, and then we can speak to it. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Councillor Verbeek, Director Morissette.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. So the 73s did approach administration about amending some prices for the advertising. So as a reminder to council, the 73s act as an agent for the advertising within the facility. So they procure the advertising for the facility, and then the town of Essex receives a share of the money that's received. So there's higher operating costs for the 73s and just life in general. So they were looking at additional revenue sources that they feel that they're able to bring in. So we're going to pull it up the chart for council to see, but the 73s did contact us that there was a small amendment that they were asked for. So you can see in the lease agreement, there's one line, the players bench, which can be removed entirely. And then under players or penalty boxes, it should be 2 feet by 22 feet. So looking for council to approve the pricing with these amendments.
Members of council. Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Reports from our youth members. Mr. Fine.
You, Madam Mayor, nothing to report tonight.
Miss Smith. Okay, you must be getting excited for the end of the school year. All right. County Council update, Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Or, Madam Mayor, I'll turn it over to you in case you have anything you want to add.
I'm losing my voice, so we're gonna save it. 13.1, correspondence to be received. Looking for a motion that we receive the correspondence. We only have one tonight from the Lake of Bays. Moved by Counselor Hammond, supported by Counselor Mady. All in favor? If somebody wants to pull it out and talk about it, be my guest. Correspondence to be received in support Saint Anglican Church, Windsor Essex Pride Festival. This is an annual request from St. Paul's Anglican Church for their flag to be flown at Town Hall on August 7th in support of Windsor Essex Pride Festival in the town of Essex. Looking to be received and supported from council. Counselor Verbeek, receive and support. I need a seconder. Counselor Mady, any questions, comments? All in favor? And that is carried. I will declare a conflict at this point and pass the gavel to the Deputy Mayor.
Mover on, all the committee meetings are the seconder. Moved by, Counselor Verbeek, seconded by Counselor Hammond. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries.
Financial 2025 Budget Initiation Memo, Director Drusevich.
Thank you, through the chair. So it is that time of year again. Administration will formally be rolling out the 2025 budget process. Council plays a large role in this as final approval rests with yourselves. So administration will email council a new intake form for all of your council budget requests. We incorporated feedback received from last year and tried to make improvements where possible. So last year, if you remember, there was an individual form, an automated form that for every capital project had to be submitted. So we heard from council that it was a burdensome process. So what we're doing this year is tweaking that process, and we will have one Excel template with drop-down options. So all of your capital projects can be populated in one spot. We'll also be asking council to share the resident budget engagement tools. So we'll have similar tools that we introduced last year with some improvements as well. So more to come, but it is that time of year already. Thank you.
A mover and a seconder that we receive the budget initiation memo. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Counselor McGuire Blaze, all in favor? And that is carried. No new business, but we do have some notices of motion. Director Malinjuklo.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Through you, there are two notices of motion to be considered tonight. I'll read out the first one. Moved by Councilor McGuire Blaze that council direct administration to review the feasibility of installing pedestrian access ramps along South Talbot Road at Eiler Avenue, Laird Avenue, and Center Street to access the multi-use pathway along South Talbot Road South.
Blaze needing a seconder for that. Counselor Hammond, Counselor McGuire Blaze, you want to speak to it? It's kind of self-explanatory, but you want to speak to it? I think it's great.
Thank you, through the chair. So this is just, there's a really big stretch. We have this beautiful trail system, but there's a really big stretch where you can't access it unless you're walking on the street. So not maybe necessarily looking for an access point at all three roads, but at least I would like at least two or one if I have to be a beggar. Just because it would be beneficial for all of the residents who use it. It's a really populated area, and I think it would be great. Right now, our bylaw doesn't allow for it because it's not a controlled stop or a controlled street. So just looking for accommodations there.
There you go. Thanks to the mayor. Yeah, I agree with it. I just wanted to, last term of council, we discussed this. Did we not have a report that came back to us back then?
That motion failed, Counselor Guerin. Counselor Mady, Counselor Verbeek, and myself supported that last time. It failed. It's on my website. I'll send it to everybody. So I hope it does pass.
Yeah, so we can bring it back then, right?
Else? All in favor? That is carried. Great work. Counselor Guerin, our Director Malanjutlo first.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, the second notice of motion to be brought forward at this evening's council meeting is moved by Councillor Guerin that council direct administration to come back with a report with options to complete the sidewalk between Thomas Street to Victoria Ave.
Guerin, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Go ahead, Counselor Guerin.
Through you, not much more to add, just looking to finish that piece if we can.
Okay, any further comments from members of council? Counselor McGuire Blaze.
I think this is a really important piece only because it will connect the Sadler's Pond Trail, the green space. It'll connect it in 2 points. So it's kind of make a perpetual loop. So it is a small area, but I think it's important to connect our trail systems as much as we can. And this is such a small area to do it. It's almost a no-brainer.
Any other discussions? All in favor? That's carried. Director Malanjutlo.
Bondi, through you, the following notices of motion are for presentment only and will be brought forward for council's consideration at the June 17, 2024 regular council meeting. Moved by Mayor Bondi that council direct administration to conduct a public satisfaction survey on Ontario Provincial Police Services being provided to the town of Essex and report the results back to council. Moved by Councillor Hammond that council direct administration to review and prepare a council report outlining the feasibility of implementing the following traffic and parking changes. 1, installing a no left turn sign on the north side of King Street to notify drivers heading northbound on McAfee that there is no left turns permitted on McAfee to King Street. 2, implementing a 2-hour parking limit along King Street from Victoria Street to Walnut Street and Queen Street from King Street to Center Street. 3, implementing community safety zones on Center Street West from Queen Street to Erie Street North and Erie Street North from King Street to Sinissac Street West to serve St. Anthony Catholic School. And 4, implementing community safety zones on Arthur Street North from Munger Street East to King Street and Center Street East from Walnut Street North to Arthur Street North to serve Harrow Public School.
You don't get to speak to them tonight.
Make a amendment to my motion.
Clerks have that.
Through the mayor, let's make it at the June 17th meeting.
Okay, all right.
Okay, reports and announcements from members of council. We'll start tonight, I guess, Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you, through the chair. I just want to remind everybody that the Fun Fest is coming up and we are looking for volunteers. We have a lot of great volunteer perks or a volunteer package, if you will, for this year. And if you would like to help your town out in any way, please reach out to myself or go on our website, the Fun Fest website, and sign up on our application. Thanks.
On June 6th, Colchester Bay Development Area is coming to the community center in Colchester for 5 to 7 meeting to show everybody what they are planning on doing with Colchester Bay in the town of Colchester. So everybody should come out and visit that and make sure you know.
Tonight.
I'll let one of the other counselors explain it better, but I know the Great Corky Fishing Derby is on the 6th, I believe, the 8th, sorry. And I'll be out there all day. It was a great event last year, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Mayor, yeah, I'll just touch on the event on Thursday night. It's probably the biggest change Colchester's ever seen. The more input that the local residents come out and give, the better it's going to be. Of course, the fishing derby, probably the best fishing derby there is in the walleye capital of Ontario. But perhaps another councillor might like to touch on it a little bit more. And the carousel start too. Don't forget, Essex has the Carousel Nations in it, the Polish club down in Colchester. So please come on out and see that too. Thanks.
My turn, Mayor? Okay, I want to wish Ann Lips a happy birthday as she turns 100 years old this week. Longtime resident of Harrow, great lady, still sharp as a tack, and I hope she has a wonderful birthday week, her and her family. Up to you, Joe.
Everybody at the fishing derby, that'll be a lot of fun. Bylaws, bylaw 2330 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the May 21st, 2024 regular council meeting be read a third and finally passed on June 3rd, moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Mayne, all in favor, and that's carried. Bylaws requiring a first, second, and third and final reading, bylaw 2234 being a bylaw to enter into a collective agreement between the town of Essex and the Canadian Union of Public Employees and its local 70.3 be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on June 3rd. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Verbeek, all in favor. And that is carried. Bylaw 2335 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement between the corporation of the town of Essex and its non-union employees. That bylaw 2335 be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on June 3rd. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions? None, all in favor. Bylaw 2337 being a bylaw to appoint a bylaw and property standards bylaw enforcement officer. And Director Chadwick, you just want to say a few words?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're happy to introduce you to Jeff Crowley, our newest member of the bylaw enforcement team. We are now back to our full staff complement with our 2 part-time bylaw officers who offer us the flexibility to be on duty during the evenings and weekends, especially during the peak season. Thank you.
Great. Being a bylaw to appoint a bylaw and project. Did I get a mover and a seconder? I don't think I did. Needing a mover and a seconder for that. It's been a long week. Councillor Hammond and Councillor Mayne, all in favor, and that's carried. That's what happens when you have a charity yard sale on the weekend. Bylaw 2333 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the June 3rd, 2024 regular meeting of council be read a first, second time, and provisionally passed on June 3rd. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire-Blaze, any questions? All in favor? And a motion to adjourn, and we hope we see you Thursday at the public open house. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Allard, all in favor? That is carried.